Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive that's both adorable and thought-provoking? We're heading to Thailand today to meet a baby hippo who's making waves, both in her watering hole and online. That's right, we're talking Moo Deng. And we've got a stack of articles here exploring her sudden rise to fame and the bigger conservation questions her story brings up. So, who is Moo Deng? Well, she's a 2-month-old pygmy hippo at the Khao Kheow Open Zoo, and the articles describe her as energetic and bouncy, which, honestly, makes sense considering how she got her name. Moo Deng means bouncy pork in Thai, which is just the most adorable thing I've ever heard. But what's even crazier is how smitten people are with her. We're talking lines out the door of the zoo before it even opens, all hoping to catch a glimpse of this little hippo. And it's not just Thailand. Her fame has gone global. There are memes, fan art, even entire social media accounts dedicated to her every wiggle and splash.
It's really incredible how fast things can go viral these days, huh? I mean, there's just something about baby animals, especially ones as undeniably charming as Moo Deng that captures everyone's attention. And it's not just fun and games either. This can have real economic impacts for the zoo and even for Thailand's tourism as a whole.
Makes you wonder, what is it about baby animals that gets us so captivated? Is it like purely instinct, this attraction to big eyes and vulnerability, or is there something more to it, something cultural maybe? Before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's talk about what makes Moo Deng extra special. She's not just any hippo, she's a pygmy hippo, and her species is facing some very real threats.
Right, as adorable as she is. Moo Deng's story reminds us that pygmy hippos are classified as vulnerable. They're dealing with habitat loss from deforestation, poaching for their meat and hides, and of course the ever-present challenge of climate change.
It's a lot to think about, especially when you realize there are only an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 pygmy hippos left in the wild. 2,000 to 3,000. So while Moo Deng is out there bringing joy to the internet, her wild cousins are fighting to survive. And it makes me think, can Moo Deng's fame actually be a force for good? Could all this online adoration actually translate into something meaningful for pygmy hippo conservation?
That's the big question, right? We've seen this before with other species. Suddenly in the spotlight. Remember a few years back? Everyone was obsessed with sloths. It's a double-edged sword, you know. On the one hand, all that popularity led to more donations for sloth conservation, and it got the word out about the threats they face. Deforestation, the illegal pet trade. But then again, there's always that risk that the cuteness overshadows the real issues. Some people might even be tempted to try and own a pygmy hippo themselves, not realizing how complicated their care is, or the ethics of keeping an animal like that.
Yeah, it's like, you see Moo Deng splashing around, you can't help but smile. But you have to remember, she's a tiny part of a much bigger picture, a species struggling to survive. And it makes you think about the role of zoos in all this. The articles mention that the Khao Kheow Open Zoo is, well, taking steps to capitalize on Moo Deng's fame, trademarking her name, merchandise, even a 24/7 live stream of her. What do you make of all that? Is it okay for zoos to profit from an animal's popularity, even if the money goes back into conservation?
It's a tough question ethically. Zoos now have to balance so much: entertainment, conservation, education, on the one hand. If Moo Deng's fame means more resources for the zoo, resources they can use to take better care of animals, fund breeding programs, support research and conservation in the wild, then maybe. Maybe it's a case of the ends justifying the means.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider that captive breeding, it can be a safety net, making sure a species survives, even if wild populations shrink.
Exactly. But, and it's a big but, it all comes down to the zoo's intentions and their transparency. Are they really putting the animals first? Are they contributing to conservation? Or are they just, jumping on the bandwagon? It's something to think about whenever you visit a zoo or see this kind of stuff online.
You've got a point there. It's a lot to process, especially when you're looking at something as cute as Moo Deng. Speaking of which, her name, Moo Deng, bouncy pork. It's so playful. It reminds me of the zoo's other hippos. Moo Toon, Moo Wan. They're all named after food. It's an interesting choice.
It is. And it makes you think about how different cultures see and interact with animals in some ways. A name like Moo Deng, it humanizes her, makes her relatable, which could make people more likely to connect with her story and with the bigger issue of pygmy hippos in the wild.
Right. It's like you hear bouncy pork and you just picture her bumbling around her enclosure, full of energy, snorting. It makes her real. Makes you want to root for her.
Exactly. And that connection, however it happens, that's what can drive conservation.
It really is amazing. The power of a name. It's like those old sayings, if it has a name, it's real. Or to name something is to know it. Maybe there's something to that, even when it comes to conservation. Sadly, though, Not everyone seems charmed by Moo Deng. One article mentioned that. The zoo's been having some issues with visitors, trying to get her attention, even when she's sleeping, splashing her, throwing things. It's disheartening, that even with something this pure, people still don't know how to act.
It's a sad truth. Responsible wildlife tourism. It's something we have to keep talking about. As much as we love seeing these animals, sharing those experiences, we have to remember we have a responsibility to do it right with respect to.
Right, keeping a safe distance, not feeding or touching them, following the rules, simple things,
Yeah.
but so important. And of course, supporting organizations doing the work, that's huge. It's one thing to share a cute video, but putting your money where your heart is, supporting those on the ground, that's how we make a real difference.
Absolutely. And that's a really good takeaway from all this. It's easy to get lost in the cuteness. But Moo Deng's fame, it's a chance for us to think about our relationship with animals in zoos, in the wild. It makes you wonder, how can we take our fascination with animals like Moo Deng and turn it into real action? Action that helps, not just one animal, but entire species and their ecosystems.
That's a powerful thought, and a perfect place to wrap up. It's been quite a journey, from a bouncy baby hippo to these bigger questions about conservation, tourism, even the power of a name. So, to everyone listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you seen Moo Deng's videos? What's stuck with you from this deep dive? And most importantly, how can we all do our part to make sure animals like Moo Deng have a fighting chance? Thanks for joining us on this incredible exploration. Until next time, stay curious, everyone. And remember, even the smallest actions can have a big impact.